Have you guys ever felt like you're in rooms where you can't fully be yourself, but to fully be yourself, you'd have to disrupt the piece and it didn't feel worth it? So you stayed and you quieted yourself and you lost little pieces of yourself along the way and you built up little resentments. And maybe it's in relationships, romantic relationships, maybe it's in your family or your work or your friendships. Well, if you have, this is the episode for you. So, welcome back to the Unfiltered Women podcast, where we are talking about being a peacemaker in your life versus being a peacekeeper. And this podcast came to me off of a lived experience that I went through really recently. And I talked about it briefly in my last podcast episode. But as it always does, I was in church. And of course, the sermon comes up and they're talking about being a peacemaker. And I was like, hell yeah, of course. I'm a peacemaker in my life. I do everything. I will always chase a life that feels good and feels peaceful. And as they were going through the sermon, I was sat down so hard. I sat down so hard and realized that I was being a peacekeeper. And as you can guess, being a peacekeeper means that you abandon a lot of parts of yourself just to keep the peace. And sometimes it's internally driven. I know it was for me. I had these wounds that I thought I had moved through, this trauma that I was like, I don't need that anymore. I'm so over that. And the awareness and the realization that, holy shit, I am operating in the same way, the same patterns. It's hard. It's hard to look at yourself in the mirror like that and be like, shit, I thought I was done with that. And here I am quieting myself to keep the peace because I'm afraid of what people will say or, disrupting things. And I kind of came to this checkpoint where I resisted it for so long. I was like, just stay, Ash. Just stay. You're good. And you know what happens when you try to shove something down inside of you and something doesn't feel good? It starts to really bubble up. And I did a meditation. And as it goes, I'm doing this meditation. And the last thing that the meditation says before it's over is, where in your life are you not upholding boundaries at a cost to yourself? Ooh, I was not ready for that question, let me tell you. So I came out of my meditation and I immediately took action because I knew all the things that I was afraid of when I disrupted things, when I left chats, when I spoke my piece, when I said what I needed to, all of those things that I was afraid of, they were happening regardless. If you're afraid that people are going to talk about you, they're already talking about you. And at the end of the day, you can't control the external circumstance. You can only control how you move, your actions, and what you choose to do for yourself. It's not easy because we're so conditioned to keep the peace. Everything, feels better. It's light. It's good. No, no, we're fine. We're good. You're not. You're self abandoning to keep the peace when you should be disrupting and creating chaos to make it for yourself. But because it's harder before it gets better, we don't choose the hard a lot of the time. So when I came out of that meditation and I did what I needed to do and I started taking action steps right away, I was met with the truth of the consequences, my actions. And, someone told me, they're like, oh my God, like that was so quick. You stepped out and someone did this immediately. And I was like, I fucking knew it. I knew it. But instead of feeling upset, I felt this overwhelming sense of peace. Like, yep, I just chose myself and I don't need to put my energy into that. And I don't need to allow it to wreck my day. I just don't have to be there. It doesn't even matter. And so I want to talk to you guys today about being peacemakers in your own life so that you don't end up keeping the peace at the expense of yourself. So I'm going to go over three things in this episode. And the first one is going to be the trap. The second is going to be the hardship. And the third is the other side. And we're going to talk about the journey of moving from peacekeeping to peacemaking and knowing that, like, for me, leaving that room, that environment, it wasn't just about the people. It was me finally admitting to myself that I wasn't here for belonging. I was here for scraps. And when I left, yeah, it triggered every old wound of rejection that I already thought I'd healed. But on the other side of that solitude and the grief was a peace that I never could have felt while I was begging to be tolerated, begging to be accepted. And so I want to walk you guys through this journey so that even though it's hard, you have the awareness and you can ask yourself some questions around where in your life this is coming up for you, where you're not choosing yourself, you're choosing everybody else's happiness, and it's building up resentment inside of you. So the difference between peacekeeping and peacemaking, it's usually you have to make peace. To make peace, sorry, you have to first disrupt it, right? It's not just go with the flow. Everyone's like, oh, just keep the peace, and that's just go with the flow. Don't say that thing. Don't piss them off. Don't do that. Don't, shh, don't do that. And we keep the peace. But we're not here to do that anymore. We're here to fucking disrupt it. So I want to ask you this question before we move into it is where in your life are you mistaking avoidance for peace? Because I know for me, when I had to look that in the mirror, I was like, oh shit, I'm a professional avoider. I'm avoiding all of the hard things I need to do because it feels like peace, but really it's avoidance in a mask. That's keeping me super comfortable. So we're going to talk about the trap of keeping the peace. The trap is that you're people pleasing, straight up. You're biting your tongue. You're saying, it's fine, I'm good, when it's not. And it's this avoidance of conflict that you think actually feels good. You're like, oh, I avoided that conflict, didn't have to do that. Nope, everything's fine. But what you're really doing is you're creating inner chaos for yourself. Every time you choose to avoid conflict that would result in more peace for you, you internalize inner chaos. And what ends up happening is you build up this resentment tax. It's pretending it doesn't cost you, right? If you don't see it, no, it's all good. That was fine. But it leaks. This resentment is going to be so sneaky. And it's like a little black shadow that leaks into your health, into your relationships, into your business. And just because it's not so loud and it's not there for everybody else to see, it doesn't mean that you don't carry that weight of resentment every single day. And the dark part of this, that little like dark shadow piece that I just mentioned, is that you're actually programming other people. You're teaching others that your needs don't matter, that your truth doesn't matter, your peace doesn't matter. And you'd rather just kind of like avoid the hardship. And at the end of the day, you don't come out as a priority. And by avoiding conflict and keeping the peace, you're actually creating that inner chaos that robs you of it. You know what I'm talking about right now. So let's go into the hardships of becoming a peacemaker, because this is where it gets real. This is where it gets hard. It is labeled correctly. Stepping into peacemaking is not glamorous. It's not like sparkly and shiny. It's discomfort. It's conflict. It's loss of approval. And the discomfort of conflict is something that we're kind of taught to avoid. And we're not really taught to go about conflict in a good way. And actually, recently in my coaching business, our staff, the head coach, he asked us, he's like, can I get a rundown of how you like to deal with conflict, how you best deal with conflict? And I was like, this is so smart to have a write-up of how everybody deals with conflict, because it's not something that really feels safe. We're always a little bit scared. Are we going to be abandoned at the end of this? Are we going to be yelled at? Are we going to be made to feel wrong? But we can't avoid it. We need to learn how to handle it well, because when we come into conflict and we have, assumed good intent, I think is really important. It's what I put down in mine. I was like, always assume good intent. Like, let's seek for understanding. Conflict doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's actually amazing when done well. And when it's more of like a sitting on the same side of the problem than a finger pointing situation. So first, we have to rework discomfort of conflict, because when you start to make peace, you're going to fuck some shit up. That's going to bring up some conflict, and that's okay as long as you're okay where you're like, it's all good. We're going to seek to understand. We want to come out the other side of this on the same page, more connected. The second point of the hardships of becoming a peacemaker is the loss of approval. And this one's hard, even for me. I really struggled with this because we're humans. And the number one thing that we really want in life is that feeling of belonging. So when we have a loss of approval, it is such an affront to our nervous system, so our safety, to how we feel. Like, People are going to get mad. They're going to be disappointed. They're going to bail. They're going to leave. They're going to talk about me. There's this loss of approval that we want to avoid at all costs. And you have to know that your own internal approval, it has to outweigh external approval. It has to be like, yeah, maybe I lost their approval, but I fucking found it in myself. I came home to myself for approval instead of needing it for them. And that is where the true peace comes from. I know. I know you know it. It's internal. You can't chase it from there. And I know it is difficult. And when I stepped out of the environments that I have recently, and I was kind of met with this like season of solitude, and I was like, whoa, I feel kind of alone, but damn, it's peaceful. And I found that I actually stopped caring about the approval because I felt so at home with myself of knowing that, like, even if I'm, on my own daily, or I have one or two friends, I don't need the approval of a room full of people that don't really want me inside of it. I need that to come from within. The next point is identity death. Whoo, boy, this one is spicy. Identity death. There's always that like loss of a piece of ourselves that we've come to know that feels like home. And when we shed it, we're left with a version of ourselves that we don't know yet. We don't really know how they move, how they think, how they act. We don't know. So as we're shedding an old identity, this part of ourselves that felt so comfortable, we're stepping into someone that we don't know. And there's this season of discomfort of you're like, am I doing this wrong? And every part of you wants to go back to that past self, the one that, has the approval and the one that avoids conflict and it doesn't feel difficult and you know exactly how they move. And I'm going to encourage you at this point, the identity death point, do not fucking return to that past self, because when you step into that next level of identity, you are becoming your higher self. And it's not easy, and it's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be worth it. And it always is. This nice guy, nice girl mask that you've been wearing, it has to go. And it leaves us raw. It leaves us being actually seen. And when we're actually seen, there's that fear that comes up of like, oh my gosh, are we going to be accepted for who we really are? There's the approval point. Maybe you are, maybe you're not, but the mask has to come off either way. Which brings us to our next point, which is short-term chaos. I like a little short-term chaos. This is where we're breaking the fake harmony, but it feels like you're breaking everything apart because everybody knows you and you internally know yourself to be someone who doesn't operate in chaos, doesn't operate in conflict. And all of a sudden you've shattered this mask and you're like, oh man, everything feels chaotic right now. Everything feels heavy. It feels like there's 1,000 balls in the air. They're all on fire. I better learn how to juggle real quick. And you're just kind of in this chaotic state. And for me, I think it lasted for about 2 months. I just came out of it. I feel very at peace now, but it was 2 months of like, oh, shit's on fire right now. Here we go. Here's Ash. She's disrupting things. And then it leads us to the last point of the hardships of becoming a peacemaker, and that is facing your own truth. This is not easy. We love to let our ego kind of come over and make us feel better so that we don't have to stare into our own darkness. But peacemaking forces you to own what you've allowed. And that's the brutal part, because no one's really gun to your head forcing you into that room, into that environment, that relationship, those conversations with your family where you just shut up. You've allowed yourself to stay there, to be palatable, to shrink. And the ownership of acknowledging that to yourself of like, shit, I am allowing this. I've created it. I did this, is a level of accountability that most people will run from their entire life. And I know that because you're on this podcast or listening to this episode, that's not you. You are willing to look in that mirror and go, I am the problem. But the good news is that you're also the solution. And there's steps that come out the other side of this, which leads us to the next point, which is what's on the other side. And what's on the other side of being a peacemaker after the chaos, the loss of approval, the identity shifts is real relationships that are built on truth and not performance. And I can't tell you how good this feels. I was chatting with a friend about how I feel like I can actually be just myself. There's no expectation. There's no, Ashley the coach, Ashley the this, Ashley the that. I'm like, I just It's just me. There's no expectation, and that feels so safe. And it's because our relationship is built on truth. I don't perform. And I realize now when I'm surrounded by these relationships that are true, how much I was performing to be liked before. And that's an uncomfortable pill to swallow. But when you make it to the other side, there's not a day that will go by where you're like, I'm not performing for a damn person. This is me. This is who I am. Take it or leave it. But if I don't have your approval, I don't fucking care. And it leads us to freedom from resentment. And this is where your nervous system actually gets to relax in life because we're not harboring these little resentments every time we quiet ourselves. And again, we're allowing ourselves to be quieted. We're choosing that for ourselves. But every time we don't speak our truth, we get a little bit of resentment that builds up. And so when we have this freedom from resentment because we're not operating that way anymore, our nervous system actually starts to relax. And that leads us to respect. Even if they don't like what you have to say, they respect that it's your truth and that you are authentically yourself and that you choose yourself and you don't bend to the whims of others so that you're a palatable little pill to swallow. You're out there and you're like, I'll make you choke. Whether you like it or not, people respect that. They're like, she's convicted. She has her truths. She does not back down. And there is a massive aspect of respect that comes with that. And that leads us to internal alignment. And that means that there's no split between your words and your soul. There's no suit that you're putting on to hide yourself from the world. There's no change that you have to make to show up. You have internal alignment. Who they see is who they get. And that's something that I'm the most proud of, especially when I meet people off of, that I've only known off social media. They're like, whoa, like you're the same. And I'm like, yes, who you see is who you get because we don't change for people. We don't show up in a way that it's not us because who can go an entire lifetime pretending to be somebody that they're not? And I know that if you're in this place where you still are having to wear masks and put on identity suits and perform, I know that you are tired. It feels heavy and you are ready to actually put that down and not carry that forward anymore. And the last stop on the other side is that you stop leaking energy into managing perception. Oof, that's a hard hitter. And the energy now goes to building your life. You stop leaking energy into managing perception. This was such a hard one for me. I would put so much energy into how people perceived me. Oh, I can't be too direct. I can't be too clear. I can't be too loud. I can't be too this or too that because how will people see me? What will they think if I say this thing? And so much energy. And my husband would always say to me, he's like, Ash, who cares? And I'd be like, you don't get it. I care. I'm in this environment. And then I'm like, why am I in a fucking environment where I'm forced to change and I can't actually speak my truth? And I'm more worried about how they perceive me than how I actually want to be. Stop leaking your energy into managing how people perceive you. And goes so deep into everything. Not starting that business, not doing that trip, not making that relationship public, not speaking your truth in a family circumstance because oh, they're going to perceive me in a certain way and they're going to talk about me. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You deserve to have the peace in your life and that the energy that was going to controlling how people perceive you now goes to funneling into building this epic life that is built from authenticity, your true voice. You speak with your fucking chest now. So as I close this, like, where are you keeping peace by betraying yourself in your life? I want you to go into this next week and disrupt one kept peace by speaking a truth that you've been swallowing. And I know that's not easy. And when I was doing this, my coach said to me, he was like, man, you guys, I was drowning in the internal chaos from hiding my truth, from quieting myself. And he said to me, he's like, you've got 3 big conversations this week. By Friday night, you've had the 3 conversations you need to have. And it was like, I kind of needed the gun to the head therapy on that to be like, yep, you're absolutely right. And he was right. After I did that, man, I can't even tell you how light I felt, how good I felt just being like, yeah, this is me. And if I lose approval, which I have, that's okay. It's okay. Because the people who know you, you're not going to lose their approval. They're going to grow with you. They're going to allow you to change. So You are disrupting one kept peace this week by speaking a truth that you've been swallowing, because keeping the peace puts you in a place of survival in your life, while making peace in your life creates sovereignty. And you deserve that in your life. So that was a quick and dirty one. I know. I just wanted to chat quickly about, are you being a peacemaker or are you being a peacekeeper? Because when I had to look at this reflection for myself, it wasn't cute. But once I started to do those hard steps and go through the solitude phases and trim down my circle, man, I can't even tell you how peaceful my life feels at this point. It is freaking incredible. If you are not signed up for the podcast email list, I am going to have a resource going out with this episode to support you through questions to help you audit your own life right now. That's going to walk you through where you're keeping the peace, where you want to make it, where that resentment is building up, and just help you free yourself up a bit in your life. So go to the links in my Instagram at Tough as a Mother and hit that email sign up form, and you will get on the list this week. You'll have that resource go out as well as this podcast linked in it. And until next week, we'll see you then.